What's up, everyone? Welcome to the LCS Countdown in our final week of the Summer Split. We're going to be taking a look at the teams at the top of the standings, some players to watch for this final week of play, and we'll be checking in with these guys' stock portfolios to see how they are doing until the timer reaches 0, and we jump into Champion Select. But my dudes, we made it all the way to the final week of regular season play. It's been a wild 2020, but how you guys doing?
I'm doing good. You're so much darker. You're like deep burgundy.
You're right.
Get brighter red.
Okay. Well, I tell you what. During the next break, I'll go sifting through some of my my closet, and I'll see if I can find something a little brighter. All right.
I mean, at least we're finally color coordinated, like we should have been doing all split. This means we're like growing together.
Yeah. It took us like what?
Although, hang on.
30 weeks.
There is something to be said, though. Mark, you're wearing 2 shirts.
I see blue under there, sir.
During the commercial break, that's coming off.
What's going on over there? What is this blasphemy? Thank you
what
very
do you
much.
mean,
All right.
dude?
Let's dive into it. We got a whole lot of impactful games heading our way. Let's take a look what's on that schedule. In Game 2, we've got Evil Geniuses taking on Golden Guardians before TL is going to face off against Immortals. But our first game of the day, Dignitas looking to bounce back against 100 Thieves, still hopeful for a postseason. And for more on that first game, let's go ahead and hand it off to Freakin' Azale, who will be bringing you the call.
Hey, thank you very much. Yes, this is going to be exciting. 100 Thieves and Dignitas are facing off. And the big thing here is that while 100 Thieves have locked playoffs, they can also get themselves into the upper bracket so they can get an extra chance at going the distance here. On the other side, Dignitas, their backs are against the wall. If they lose today, they will be the first team eliminated from Summer Split playoff contention.
Exactly. Even with a win, they would still be dependent on CLG losing. So, they're not fully in control of their destiny, but we need to see them step up here, try to take a win if they want to keep those playoffs and even eventually World Dreams alive. Sure. They have to have, I think, Dardoch really on a dominating matchup because Dignitas has had this bad habit of when falling behind in a number of games for the last couple of weeks, they just seem to sit back. They don't really have any proactivity going on. They're looking to scale. They're giving up far too much and then putting themselves in an unwinnable position when they do finally look to take that fight. So I want to see them go towards aggressive solo lanes, aggressive jungle picks here for Dardoch, where they can look to fight early and often because Aframu and Johnson are someone that you can depend on later in the game to really control those team fights, but you have to be in a reasonable spot when you get there.
Well, the difficulty, of course, is, as you mentioned, aggressive solo lanes. They got Someday to face against up in that top lane. And Viper has had some decent games this split, but Someday is a top 2 top laner in the LCS, and winning against that guy sounds pretty hard.
It really does. Someday has been on a tear lately. Since getting back to the LCS in general, he really has been one of the best in the league. People are very frightened of this guy on a lot of different champions. His GP game the other day against Lorem, he was slamming him even at level 1. The utilization of the Gangplank passive has been very, very good from him. And just overall, he has been a beast. This is going to be an extremely tough matchup for Viper. You can see the differences, especially in damage done in the laning phase as well, kind of represented by CSD at 10 there. It's a pretty stark difference. Viper does have his good games, and I think they're going to really need to get one from him because this seems like a very big mismatch up in that top lane. And if you want to give Dardoch somewhere to go, somewhere to attack, Viper, I think, is going to need an advantageous matchup to stay in it against Someday.
Yeah, and it's not like they're playing that dissimilar of champions or on teams that dissimilar of records. At the end of the day, honestly, Someday is performing better. That's everyone's expectation, obviously, but he is such a better player. It's going to be a tough one. But we'll see if Dig, again, their backs are against the wall. We'll see if they can do it. Now, that's going to be what we're looking for. Analyst Desk, back to you. Let's get a look at the playoff format.
Red Squad.
Hey, everyone. With the regular split approaching its conclusion, I wanted to run you through what the summer postseason will look like in playoffs oversimplified. 8 teams seed into the battle for LCS champion, with the top 6 teams starting in the upper bracket and the final 2 teams starting in the lower bracket. The difference is simple. Lose in the upper bracket and you get one more shot in the lower bracket. Lose in the lower bracket and your playoff run ends. The first and second place teams get to rest easy in week 1, while the third through 6th place teams duke it out to kick things off. The first place team will get first pick at the winners from round 1, with the second place team getting the remaining victor. But the run isn't over for the losers of those matches. If you're a fan of, say, FlyQuest, and they fall short in round 1, they can still make a run through the lower bracket. Say they have to face Dignitas. They'll need to win 2 consecutive best-of-5s to compete at the lower bracket finals. Back at the upper bracket, week 2 wins mean you make Worlds. Win 1 more best-of-5, and you've got a one-way ticket to the finals, with the loser getting a shot at revenge if they win the championship qualifier versus the winner of the lower bracket finals. By the time we're at finals weekend, we'll have our 3 teams going to Worlds, with the winner of Saturday going to the title match where we crown the title of North American champion. And that's all you need to know for playoffs Oversimplified.
Thank you very much, Riv. A behemoth of a postseason headed our way. All eyes are going to be on that race for playoff seeding. So let's go ahead and check in, see where the teams are arranged in the standings. Of course, Team Liquid has surprised many with snagging that number 1 seed. 13-3 stands their record. 2 teams tied for second, Cloud9, TSM. If both of those teams win out their regular season games, they will force a tiebreaker for that second spot. Of course, 100 Thieves did clinch a playoff spot, at least, with some of the results from yesterday, so only 1 spot does remain in the postseason to be given to either CLG, Immortals, or Dignitas with their games this weekend. Also important to note, though, with that 100 Thieves squad, while they have locked a postseason, they are still very much alive in the hunt for the upper bracket, wanting that all-important double elim. Go ahead, Crumbs.
I thought it was wild that you could actually make it to playoffs with a 5-13 record.
It is a little wild.
Yeah, new split.
What?
It's possible. It's possible if those bottom teams lose out that CLG ekes in with a 5-13. But let's refocus towards the top of the table, because I think that's where things really get interesting in the conversation of buys and who's going to get it. But, of course, we'll start with Team Liquid, our current number 1.
Right, and I think they're actually playing a lot better than even some people are giving them credit for. At the beginning of the split, it was a lot of shaky wins that they were picking up, and people were critical for them. Like, okay, how did Mordekaiser get this pick in the river? Or against, Immortals, like, okay, if they actually just land this shockwave correctly, Team Liquid would have lost this game. And people were focusing a lot on the mistakes that other teams were making in order for Team Liquid to win. But in the back half of the split, they've actually vastly improved. In the second round robin, they have cut 5 minutes off their win time, which is absolutely incredible, as well as had more time with a major lead. So they've done a lot better at actually controlling games and closing them out quickly, which is what a lot of people were critical of them from before. They're actually a super fast team now. They've jumped way ahead in the standings in terms of their average game or win time, excuse me.
You know, part of that criticism for me on Team Liquid was at the start how their champion pool felt really lackluster. Like, they were playing very few champions, and in fact, they are the lowest in champion diversity for the rest of the team. It's basically about 6 champions apiece here, which is bannable, right? You can actually target that one pretty straightforward. But the more that we have seen Team Liquid play, the more I actually think this turned out to be one of the strengths and consistency for the roster, because unlike the other 2 top teams, TSM and Cloud9, Team Liquid never puts themselves in a position where they have just lost the game from the draft, where they're at such a disadvantage. They're always giving themselves the tools to win a game, and that consistent drafting, yes, it has given less diversity, but it has yet to be exploited, and it's giving them a lot of safety nets when they're playing a game so that they can be as consistent in their number 1 team.
Yeah, I mean, consistent drafts, I definitely agree with for Team Liquid. The one thing that still bothers me is it doesn't feel like a complete team, and the biggest focus for me is like Brox's performance and how he gets involved with the lanes. He's one of the lowest first blood percentage junglers. He's 7th, and he's 8th for kill participation for junglers. And remember, Team Liquid is a pretty slow team. Like, they usually team fight together. They don't really have these scrappy fights everywhere. So the fact that he's not involved in these fights makes me kind of worried for how they're going to go forward.
Yeah, perhaps liability there. I want to jump back to this champion diversity point, Crumbs. What's your opinion on how that interacts with the best of 5 as opposed to the best of 1s? Because as you mentioned, so far it hasn't necessarily been their downfall. But is there any fear that when you get to best of 5 and you redo that draft over and over again, that the champion diversity starts to hurt them?
There is a tiny bit, particularly because Broxa, I don't think, has shown as wide of an array champion pool that you'd like to see right now, especially when it comes to those carry picks. And in the top lane, we haven't seen Impact prioritize a lot of carries. Now, the one side that I think is really good for Team Liquid is that do you need to play carries? Because there's actually quite a bit of tanks and other champions in the top lane that you can just play and mitigate the fact that you can play bruisers now as they got buffed in 10-15. So I think that yes, it can be exploited, but they're really making it work with what they've got, and it's not like they're going to run out of tools for the style that they're playing.
I don't think that they'd run out of tools, but I don't think they're going to do anything super interesting either. Whereas on the flip side, TSM, TL's way at the bottom of the unique champions play. TSM's on the complete other end of the spectrum. They're at the top, and they're the ones who are willing to pull off that weird new crap that you're seeing in solo queue, like the Fiddlesticks mid. I'm sure they'll try the new mid. They're already playing the Aurelia after it got buffed. Like, TSM is willing to try new things, and yes, that does hurt their drafting sometimes. To Crumbs' point, we've seen the horrible AP comp that they kind of had with that Fiddle mid one time, but that does mean that they'll have extra spice heading into the playoffs and the best of fives, that they can throw that wrinkle at you that you're not ready for and then completely screw over all your preparation because you're like, oh god, now we have to ban this thing we didn't see. For Team Liquid, they don't have that same concern, but I think that's one of the things that could help TSM in the best of 5 playoffs is having that little bit of extra spice, even if it does come with the extra risk of maybe booming your draft if you don't do it correctly.
Yeah, we've seen that diversity come from a number of players on TSM. The Lucian coming out for Doublelift, the Yumis and more for Treats, and then, of course, in the top lane for Broken Blade. Probably talk to me about this guy and kind of how the meta seems to be maybe falling right back into a sweet spot for Broken Blade TSM in the top lane.
Yeah, I mean, normally North American tops are kind of in this tank meta, which isn't wrong. Tanks are really strong, they're really reliable, but usually when we see like a second pick top laner, it's usually matched with a tank. But for Broken Blade, he's very comfortable playing these carries. We saw Aurelia get buffed last patch, Akali's buffed this next patch, and last week he pulled out the Aurelia versus Licorice's Kinnan, which is like one of his signature picks. So having a top laner that's comfortable doing this is like really, really exciting because we get to see, what happens when a top snowballs. Normally, when that tank gets ahead, it's he's just going to walk into team fights and be stronger later. We're not going to see like any pop-off moments. So I really like this kind of, dynamic that the team has.
We'll remember. Oh, go ahead, Crumb. Sorry.
It's scary because Bjergsen is popping off, and then Treats and Doublelift are actually playing well. I think, Treats hasn't died in the last 5 games. Doublelift is doing fine with his new lane partner, and with Bjergsen putting up the insane, whether it's Zillion or LeBlanc performances, you actually have a 3-threat team now where you have Broken Blade in the top lane playing his bruisers, Doublelift being consistent, and then Bjergsen, whether it's a supportive style Zillion Twisted Fate or even the carry, he's still delivering, and that actually slots quite well for where they want to have Spica, being a more bruiser, supportive style jungler, less more of the carry role. So they tried this Spica experiment, put him on the carry, didn't work out. Now that the other members are actually ready to carry and pop enough, he can be in a safer role, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, Bjergsen, kind of a late entry to that conversation for MVP mark, but so much of it seemed to be tied to the idea that he was Mr. Consistency kind of throughout the split, whereas some of our other picks for MVP have had both hot and cold moments.
Yeah, Bjergsen has been great all split long. The people that were above him prior was someone like Blabber, but with C9 continuing to struggle in the back half of the split, I feel like, this race has totally blown open. And C9 coming to the second, this weekend, we were expecting them to run over their competition. They have a pretty easy weekend, all things considered, and we're hoping to see them grab some momentum for playoffs. This game versus Dig was not that. It was not impressive at all. Dig is not a great team, if we're being honest, and they struggled. They easily could have lost this game. We're looking at a potentially that Phoenix mistake for why C9 was able to win this game when they did, and that's not convincing for me. I'm really, really worried about this team heading into playoffs, and they seem to have completely lost their footing.
Yeah, and this was kind of like an issue where while we're watching Cloud9, like we just didn't know what's going wrong. And I talked to a lot of players and coaches as well, and they're like, yeah, they're just kind of worse right now. And Niski spoke out in an interview with a very dashing human being about the fact that they were experimenting, and during the course of experimenting, they lost a handle on where the meta was going because they were stuck weeks behind trying to figure out what was good back then. So now catching up, these control mages are resurging, and this just changes how you team fight and how you roam around the map. And Niski's such an influential player, it's just been a trickle-down effect on the whole team. So I think once they catch up with the meta, they're going to return back to the form that we were used to.
That's
Right.
actually the classic way that the top teams have to consistently try to innovate while the rest of the teams are catching up. They go into, say, a dead alley, or I think that's the way, right? One-way street, right?
Dead end?
Right, a dead end, and trying to figure out what comp they're going to build while the rest of the teams catch up. And now suddenly they're behind because they're the ones experimenting, looking for something new. It was the wrong idea, and now they have to start from zero.
Yeah, a dead alley or a one-way cul-de-sac. All right, we'll get the final results for these teams when C9 and TSM return to the stage tomorrow. Team Liquid are the only team out of those top 3 that will play today, and will look to secure their first seed with a win over Immortals in that third game of the day. We're going to step away. Before we go, here's some sage advice from a literal world champion. Don't go anywhere.
And now, it's time for sage advice from a literal world champion.
Crushing North America in Spring Split. Going 9-0 in the first half of Summer Split. How predictable. Sometimes you've got to surprise your competition. Consider going 2-5 in the second half of Summer Split. Killing all expectation for your team right in time for Worlds. Now that's a power move. Besides, who doesn't love a comeback?
This has been sage advice from a literal world champion.
Welcome back to the LCS Countdown, where we're ringing in the opening bell for LCS Stock Market. The final buy period for the analysts. This is do or die time. It's where all the money is made or lost, gentlemen. But before we see where you're throwing all your weight behind this week, let's see where the LCS Stock Market stands, as well as your current portfolio values. There are some huge numbers coming into Week 9 for the LCS Stock Market. Freak at almost 8K, whereas Probably's the only person who's managed to lose money this split.
What did Freak do?
It's insane. This is the best I've ever had. I've never had 6,500 before, and somehow I don't feel good about it at all because everyone's killing it this split. I don't get it.
I love how all 3 of the guys who aren't on the desk are the ones who are up over.
Brawly's
7K.
ruining our reputation.
No, it's not about the money. It's about the friendships.
That's what someone that's broke would say. That's what a broke person would say.
As you can tell from this chart, I am very broke. Yes, I've buried all my money in the backyard. I'm not investing this week.
And while we laugh about where all the analysts stand, I do want to point out our team standings as well, because for the first time since like Week 1 of Spring Split, Cloud9 is not the top dog when it comes to the prices of the teams. Team Liquid has taken that title with Cloud9's most recent slips in the standing. But we've had essentially 15 weeks and 8 buy periods over the course of this entire year. Comes into this one final week, 2 games for each of your teams or your portfolios to make all the moves you want to make. Crumbs, you're the first one up. Where are you throwing your big bet?
So just like Mark, even though I'm 20% up on my starting amount, I still feel inadequate. So I went for Dignitas because they are the cheapest team, and they play a style of either not showing up to play a game whatsoever or actually trying. And I figured they lost one of those brutal games last week. They're going to show up again yesterday because we made these before the matches yesterday. And, well, Cloud9 was in a bit of a slump. And because of the way that the stock markets work, it would have been a big win. Dignitas still in playoff run, so I think the team actually has a little bit more gas left in the tank. That's why I went for them. Unfortunately, they already took that loss to Cloud9. But it was a close game, and hopefully they do that again with 100 Thieves.
I gotta say, I'm down with the line of logic that Crumbs was using. Like, Dignitas versus C9 was one of those really believable upsets, and it almost happened. It just didn't work out, and for me, I wasn't down to go that risky. You know, I feel bad about my 6,500, but not willing to totally throw it away. So I went 100 Thieves there. You saw they were also valued pretty low, but I think they have a much more winnable record coming up with these 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, on that point though, Crumbs, I want to jump back to you because I like the idea or the concept of the upside there that you have in terms of taking down a top team like Cloud9 while seeing Cloud9 struggle. Of course, the loss already came through, hoping to make up a little bit of that with the second game of the weekend for Dignitas. The big bet is 100 Thieves for Mark, but probably where do you fall?
I'm trying to get out of the red, and I'm just following Mark here. I thought 100 Thieves had a pretty solid schedule too. I think they're going to give enough money where I can break back into the 5,000. Like, I just want to be above where I started. I don't want to lose money. I'll gain like $5. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I got to say, like,
red. You're wearing red.
coming off.
We're supporting 100 Thieves. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
doing.
that's what
We're
it
in
is.
red. But I was going to say, yeah, they're 2 games. Like, EG is slumping super hard. They were tied with C9 for being one of the worst records in the back half of the split. So, like, that's a very likely upset. And then Dignitas is a relatively, easy opponent. I do think Dignitas could easily win that one as well. But they do feel like they could go 2-0 and take down someone above them in the standings and give us a pretty large lead.
I got good and bad news for the two of you, Prowley and Mark. You both threw your weight behind 100 Thieves. Freak, our current leader, also chose to throw his weight behind 100 Thieves. So this does mean, unfortunately, you won't be able to catch him, but you are
Can I
following
change?
suit
Shucks.
with the
I would've
current
never known.
stock market leader. So if his trajectory is anything to be gleaned from, both of you will be lunging further up the standings there. I do want to go ahead, though, and know which teams, or now rather that we know which teams you guys have your eyes on. I want to focus in on some players that we'll keep tabs on in our players to watch this week. This week's players to watch are Golden Guardians, Huhi, FlyQuest, Ignar, EG's Huni, and 100 Thieves, Poom. Let's start with Golden Guardians, Huhi.
I gotta say, Huhi, I don't know. Dash, do you have a gavel or something? We need to go ahead and say this role swap has been a success. Like, bang the gong. He's had monster bard games. Yesterday he had a monster bard game versus TSM. He was, landing clutch findings and game-changing ultimates. And honestly, he's like one of the best set supports in North America. Not just that, but his laning skills are not too shabby. He's actually trading flashes with AD carries, creating so much space for FBI to grab all these stats. So I'm really happy that we have a support who role swapped and who's been successful on control mages and also these melee supports.
Makes you wonder what would have happened if they landed on Huhi earlier in the year and let him level up even beyond this.
Yeah, he hasn't even been there this whole time. So I think with the whole year of synergy, they would be in a better spot, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'll look into getting a gavel as well, probably. Thanks for bringing that up. Let's talk about another support player who absolutely is key to victory for his squad. That would be FlyQuest Ignar. Mark?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see Ignar back in form again. There's that bit of a dip in the middle of the split when he was playing with Mashme, but I think ever since Turtle stepped back in, it has unlocked Ignar going aggressive again. He's one of the best playmakers in the support position. You always have to keep your eye on him. So many different champions in his pool as well. He's willing to try the riskier picks like the Pantheon, and so I'm really excited to see what he has in store heading into playoffs. They have a relatively easy strength of schedule here this week, so pick up a couple wins, style on kids while you do it, and then get ready for playoffs because he will be very important for their run to mirror the run that they had in spring to reach the finals.
Exactly. Those playoff highlights that we saw from where they beat TSM was all about that innovative combo of the Trundle Rakan that nobody seemed to have an answer, where it just set up Ignar to be an absolute monster on Engaged Champions. He's not playing Enchantress, he's just hardcore Engaged. He is the way that FlyQuest starts fights, and oftentimes he actually ends up delivering, which is really impressive.
Well, from one aggressive player to another, but this one on the top side of the map, let's talk about Evil Genius's Huni.
So, yeah. Huni, when he we had to because when he came to EG, we thought, all right, I guess he's going to play an academy and eventually overtake Kuma, but we did not anticipate that it would come off a bit of a slump from the entire Evil Genius squad. So we're not really sure if Huni came in to replace a slumping EG or if this was part of the plan all along, but no matter what, he has been a really bizarre player to track because he looks better statistically when he's left on his own versus when given attention. It's almost like the more you try to play around Huni, the worse that the team ends up playing, whereas when you leave him alone on champions like the Gangplank or even the Rumble, then he's actually able to contribute to the team fights really well and still play his lane out safely. But because his champion pool hasn't been as eccentric as we know Huni can be, it's made EG fairly predictable with the addition of Golden Glue as a very stable mid laner. So I think that moving forward, they'll have to lean into Huni's carry potential and try to make it work because it's bonkers that you're playing strong side with somebody and that's how you lose.
Right, exactly. I mean, Huni is a veteran player with a very storied career. From here, I want to jump to a very rookie player, but who also has a career that's already kind of in flux, Mark. It's hard to nail down Poom. Let's talk about him.
Right. I think, he's had this meteoric ascension into the LCS fast. It's like so fast. It's incredible to watch. But at the same time, he is still struggling a little bit. They're playing game 1 here, and so I have my eye on him because in wins, he looks fantastic. And I know that KDA stats really reflect, like, if you're winning, they look good. And if they're bad, if you're losing, they look bad. But these are like so far apart.
This is wild.
This is definitely wild. And I think this shows his inexperience a little bit. When he falls behind, he struggles to stop the bleeding. He struggles to find his place in playing from behind in competitive play. And he just keeps dying. And it's something that is a skill that takes a little bit to learn, how to contribute to your team when you can't actually walk up and be the front line that you can when you're ahead. And so when he's ahead, he's playmaking. He's great. It's incredible. Once he dies a couple times, it keeps going on. He can get picked on pretty hard. And I think this is one of the areas he could improve on a lot, which I want to see considering they can actually still grab, the upper bracket playoff spot if they can take down EG. So they have a lot on the line in this weekend and heading into playoffs, and I think he's one of the key factors for them.
Yeah, night and day statistics in wins and losses. Let's get some win conditions on the board for these first 2 teams because they are the teams that you put your big bets behind for the stock market. So probably your first 100 Thieves. What's the answer?
So I'm going to go ahead and play towards 100 Thieves' strengths. I'm going to pick a strong mid-jungle duo, and I'm also going to attack Dignitas' strength, which is Dardoch. So I'm going to use the strong mid-jungle duo. I got something in the top lane. He's a great player, and I'm going to ban Riven in 4-5. So we're not worrying about that. I have a strong top, strong mid-jungle. I'm going to invade that, shut down Dardoch, and I'm going to be able to snowball the game off of that.
All right, 50 seconds to game time. Crumbs, what's the response for Dignitas?
If there's anything we've learned from Dignitas this way is that their strength, the best player to play around is Johnson. Let Johnson carry. Stop inting into him and carrying him to the Shadow Realm with you. I'm looking at mid laners. You know who you are. Secondly, give Viper the counter pick. You know they're going to play around topside. Let him handle someday, and then just make sure you have multiple engage tools like you did against Cloud9. Same game plan will work against 100 Thieves. Survive early, good team fighting, dragon control. They got this.
Well, those are the recipes for success for each of our teams. We'll see which one decides to follow these smart dudes right here. It's time to hand it over to the casters to get ourselves into game 1. Enjoy.